Hi, I'm Jo from J.H.Leather, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make your own passport cover. Let's get started. Okie dokie, so for this tutorial you are going to need to download and print off your patterns for this project. And then once you print them out, we're going to cut them out roughly and then glue them onto some card that makes them easier to draw around when we are marking out onto our leather. Once you've put them onto your card, you're then just going to cut them out. And then we can start marking these out onto our leather. So like with all my patterns, the leather information is on the guide that comes with the pattern pack. And then once you've done drawing around your patterns, you can then cut them out. So once we're done cutting out, we can then do some edging. So on all the pocket parts, we're just going to edge on the one side on both flesh and the grain side. And then on part 8, we're just going to nick the corners of our main body. And then we can number one edge around the whole of the grain of our leather. And then on the flesh side, we want to mark out where parts E and C stop. So you can do this by putting parts E and C into the case and just marking with your scratch awl there. And then you can edge in between these marks. Now once we're done with our edging, we can then stain and crease our pieces. So with the pocket bits, we're just going to stain on that crease side, and with the two little T-shaped ones, we want to also stain on the underside of that little T bit as well. And then we can crease around all our edges. And once we're done staining and creasing, we want to take our two T-shaped pieces and we're going to mark out where we're going to skive on these. Because they're going underneath, we want to remove any bulk that could happen. So we're going to set our dividers first to 1/2 inch and then draw a line on the bottom edge of both parts on the flesh side. And then we're going to set our dividers to 3/8 and go along the shorter side. And now I'm going to be using a paring knife for skiving this. Whatever sort of knife you have should be fine for this. I just find that the paring knife is a little bit easier than my head knife. And we're just going to skive those edges from our lines that we have just drawn on. So we want to skive them down to nothing, because like I said, we're doing this to reduce the bulk that will be underneath the pockets that are on top of these. Now you may need to sharpen your knife a few times doing this, and the sharper your knife is, obviously the easier it is to actually do your skiving. And I'm still quite new to using this paring knife, so I've probably not got the best technique going here, but you sort of get an idea as to what we're trying to aim for. And then once you've done that, we're going to put part B and part C together. So we want to get our pattern and mark where that stitch line is going to be, and on the flesh side of our piece. And then we're just going to even that up with a set square and draw a line between it, and then we can just scruff up this edge a bit because we're going to be gluing these two pieces together, and this will just help the glue to stick. So we're going to mark the same line onto part C, just so we've got a guide as to where we can put our glue. And then we can glue these two pieces together. So the glue I'm using here is a contact adhesive, specifically Bostik 6092, which is used a lot in the shoe industry. And once you've got your parts stitched together, you then want to get your pattern from part B back and then mark on where your stitching is going to be. And your patterns are probably going to look a little bit different to mine. I'm using the prototype pack that I made for myself to make this video, so yours will be slightly different with a bit more information on. And then once you've done that, you can then stitch mark along that line. I am using a number 7 stitch mark, so I have 7 stitches per inch. And once you've done that, we can then do our stitching. So we're going to double hand stitch along that line. And now usually I would say we would start with the back stitch, but because this is not going to be an area of wear, it's not totally necessary for this part of the case. And then once you get to the end of your line of stitching, you will do 1.5 back stitches to get both threads on the back side of your leather and just to lock those stitches in place. Now we can start assembling our case. So what we're going to do is we're just going to glue in between those two marks that we have on our case. And then we can glue onto our pocket. And now you'll see on your pattern that you've got 4 dots. This is where we will mark our stitching to. So we need to now mark these onto the back of part A. And then once we've got both sides in, we can set our dividers to our stitching width, which mine are usually about 1/8 of an inch. And then we can draw around our case between those dots that we have marked on. And then we can stitch mark along that line. And once you've done stitch marking, we can then stitch both of our sides in place. And remembering, once you get to the end of your stitching line or your length of thread, to do 1.5 back stitches. And then once you've got both your sides in, we can then trim off any excess. So the patterns are made to have about 1/8 of an inch overlap, so when we do this trimming we can get nice flush edges. And then once we've done that, we can number 1 edge around the cut edges on the inside of our case. And then to finally make our edges all nice and flush, we can use some sandpaper on the edges, and this just gives our stain a nice edge to sort of grip to, and they will ultimately come up better. And once we've done staining and polishing the edges of our case, we can then recrease all the way around both the outside and the inside pieces of our case. Then the final thing we have to do is just use our bone just to push out the edges, and if there's any glue sticking there, it will just remove this. And here is the final case. So all that's left to do is to put in your cards, and who doesn't go on holiday without their Tesco's club card or their Sainsbury's nectar card? And then you can obviously pop your passport in the other side. And this case has been made so you've got 2 extra pockets, so for cash and for travel tickets as well. So that is the end of this video. If you like the video, please click the thumbs up button and subscribe for more videos and tutorials. And remember to make sure you hit that notification bell button to get notified whenever I post new content. And I'll see you in the next video.